Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
Thank you for listening today. My guest is Devin Culpepper with The Source, and she's also a TLBT advisor. Thank you for joining me, Devin.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Go ahead and start by just telling our listeners maybe a little bit about how you got started in Longhorns and how it brought you on the path to where you are today, being so involved with the youth.
Well, do you want like the long, like forever ago start, or the kind of condensed version?
I mean, I love long stories, but it's whichever you want to share.
Okay, perfect. So actually my, I guess, knowledge of Longhorns being shown and, youth involvement goes back all the way to my first involvement with cattle, or with show cattle anyways. My dad was working for a gentleman who actually raised Longhorns in North Texas, Tommy Hope. We drug my first show heifer home in a trailer, and he saw her and he was like, "Yeah, she looks so good. She looked great with horns on her." And I'm like, "No, that's not happening. Please don't do that." He had some riding steers and stuff. So my familiarity started but stopped. So it wasn't again until my senior year. I was leaving state fair with my Brahman heifer, and the Ferris FFA group came in and they needed my spot. And so my mom had just pulled up with the trailer, and Tracy Kruger and her team, they moved me. Like, they loaded us up for it. All I did was lead my heifer to the trailer. I was like, oh my goodness. So at that point I learned about Audubon and all that stuff, but I was a senior, so there wasn't much I was going to do from there on. That kind of led into, I met some people in college, one of which being Ryan. Of course, you can kind of figure out those pieces there. As far as like my involvement with, when I was a youth, that's probably, a big thing that led me into like why I like youth involvement or being involved with the youth so much. I was heavily involved in 4-H and FFA, and just feel like braces and cows were the thing that turned me into the person I am today,
I love that. Gotta give those braces credit, right?
It was a big difference for sure. So. And I work in the dental field now, so I still have both.
Nice. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the Texas Longhorn specifically a little bit. Why is it important, do you feel like, to engage the youth within the Longhorn breed?
Well, I mean, for tons of reasons. The cliche response is because they're the future of the breed, right? And they are, that's true. But if we're focusing on youth at all, it's going to drive a familial involvement. All of our events really are family friendly. So like we had noticed a few years ago that there's just like kids running around doing all sorts of stuff, not really paying attention to the cows. So like, let's get them involved, because if they get involved in sports, the parents are going to wane eventually when that time comes. So if we can keep them around the cows, then, sorry, I talk with my hands.
You're good. You're good.
If we can keep them around the cattle, we're going to keep the parents around as well. It keeps the breed moving forward. Young people bring new ideas. Sometimes those are really phenomenal ideas that no one's ever thought of before. So we've got, and like Ryan and I were talking yesterday, and it's something that maybe I wouldn't have thought of specifically, to put it this way, but in a breed of this size, everyone matters. It's not just the big guys that are breeding thousands of cattle a year. It's everybody. If you've got 5 cows, you matter in this. So So we do what we can to try to bring, and keep as much involvement as possible.
That's a great point. I like that. So do you feel like within the Longhorn breed specifically, the opportunities are a little bit more unique for young people compared to other bigger breeds?
I think so. And they're definitely not lacking in other breeds. So if someone's listening to this and they're, thinking I'm trying to cut anyone down, I'm not. But they're just different. We're not so small, but we're small enough that like I can have a youth member, call you and ask you questions. In a larger breed, that may not happen, where you're busy now for sure. But if you were dealing, with tens of thousands of members, and even the TLBA office specifically, because that's the one I go to, I can just walk in there and talk to them. If they were dealing with a larger member population, I probably wouldn't be able to go myself and just ask questions at any moment or things like that.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about actually getting involved. So if I'm a parent of a child who's interested, or I'm interested, or, you have a youth come to you, how can they get started? Like, what can their involvement be? What sorts of opportunities are out there? What would their first steps be?
Sure. So, it would kind of depend on where they would want to go, or, where they are in the country, or even the world. I mean, we've got breeders all over the place. So of course the associations are fantastic. First, the first place to look at, the TLBA, the ITLA, those are the two that I know of that definitely have youth programs. So, they could send you to, like, the TLBA could send you to TLBT Advisors, which is the youth organization there. The ITLA could send you to their youth directors. So that would probably be the best first step, in my opinion, would be calling and contacting those people. If you weren't, familiar with those kinds of things, then, maybe you're just looking around. There's events all over the place. We go to regional and national events all over the country, and just look. They're everywhere, and meeting people is one of the things that we're probably the biggest proponents of. Is you've got to talk to people. You've got to go out and you've got to meet people and ask them questions, because people love to talk about their cows. They'll tell you anything you want to know. Maybe some things you didn't want to know. So that would probably be my first thing is you got to talk to somebody. So whether it be the association or find a breeder local to your area, that's going to be their best first step.
Well, so you mentioned TLBA and ITLA, and before you and I started talking, I was recording a podcast with Ryan, and he and I both grew up in the TLBT. And so does it still, I feel like maybe folks still think, well, that's only if I want to show. Like, I should only talk to those associations if I'm interested in, like, the halter breaking show part. Is that accurate, or have they really, like, spread their focus now to have other opportunities as well?
So I love that question. So actually, it is on the TLBT side, anyways, for the TLBA, the main driver of the youth association is still the haltered shows. We are actually working with the TLBT officers and directors on getting them more involved throughout the breed. It seemed like they kind of got for a little while where it was such a niche within a niche. Mm-hmm. And we have some young people that are recognizing that and seeing, like, there are futurities that are going on all over the place every weekend. And they want to be involved in those things as well. So I see a future where it isn't primarily haltered shows. But currently I can't say that. I do believe the ITLA, they kind of have more of and someone can correct me on this later if I'm incorrect. But I do believe that they more blend the futurity and the haltered shows within their events. And I love that as well.
So outside of those two groups, or I know everything's kind of still intertwined a little bit, because like you said, the size of the industry, but talk to me a little bit about some of the events that you're involved with that are opportunities for young people, regardless of if they're TLBT or ITLA members.
Sure. So the ones that it doesn't matter which one you're a member of, or even if you're a member, sometimes the only ones that I know of are the ones that we host as the source. And we're not really great about having one event and doing it regularly for a lot of years. We love to fill a need and kind of fill in gaps where we see them in the industry. So, we've done haltered shows before. We started with Cole Meeks last year doing the futurity judging competitions. Those have been really fun. We've done 2 so far, and we have plans to do a few more. We did the next gen competition at the Battle on the Prairie this year that your partner Jamie helped me out a whole bunch with, so that was awesome. And I loved that. I thought it went really well. I know Josh Dinwiddie with Battle on the Prairie has asked us to do that again. So,
and tell our listeners a little bit about what that was exactly.
Sure. So the next gen competition was a 2-part competition. You could enter either one or both of the contests. And there was a speech contest. And it was a quick one, 90 seconds, tell us about this particular topic, kind of like an elevator speech, but about your cattle. And then the other one was graphic design. So the different age groups had different prompts that they had to design something for. The young ones could do it on a poster board, because while I am often impressed by young people's computer skills, some people just don't have that capacity. So we allowed some, posters for the little ones so that they could get their hands dirty. And then, we go all the way up to 21 to try and entice those young people to stick around. And to stay within the breed even while they're in college. So that was something that they didn't have to have cattle for. They didn't even have to be a member of a registry to enter that. So I really liked that contest. That was kind of my brainchild and my baby. And Ryan just said, have at it. And the Dinwiddies were like, yeah, bring it on. So I was pumped. And awesome. It went really well. So I was glad.
So I feel like I interrupted you a little bit to get you to explain that. Are there other events besides those 2 that are beneficial to get involved in?
Besides which 2? Oh, the judging contest and the next gen. So I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure we'll be coming up with something. Because we're always thinking. So like I said, we love to fill gaps. That's how the source got started. We saw a gap in the industry, there was no we, it was Ryan and some friends. And then it's just kind of taken off from there. When Audubon went away, there was a gap there. So we stepped in and filled that for a few years. And then the haltered shows on the TLBAA side, they just took off kind of right after that. So we stepped back from there and then started going to futurities and seeing that there were kids everywhere. There were young people that were running around all over the place. They could tell you the pedigrees of these cattle better than any of the youth members I had ever seen. But they didn't have any outlet for competition. And I do feel like competition is kind of how you really get people engaged and involved, like give them something to do. And I've seen that grow quite a bit, actually, even in the futurities, the desire to involve the youth, even if it's just, having a sand pile and getting them to play and actually play together. That can be huge also.
Yeah, I know by the time this podcast airs, it will be quite a ways back, but just, not that long back when we were recording it, at the Top Hand sale, they actually had like a youth auctioneer who got to come in and I think, sell a few lots and stuff. And so I think there's just a lot of things popping up that are definitely trying, like you said, just trying to get them more involved and more interested. And for folks that maybe don't know what the Autobahn is that you keep referring to, can you just no, you're good. Those of us that have been involved for a while definitely know and are sad we didn't sad we missed out on it. But can you just explain to our listeners, brief overview what that was?
Sure. So the Autobahn was actually pretty dear to me and even to Ryan. It was ran by some men that had been involved in the Longhorn industry for a long time. It was specifically youth focused at its height. I believe there were well over 900 cattle there. And that was a weekend. So it was essentially a junior nationals. But it started within the association, but then branched out to be its own thing. And they were giving away, I think over $450,000 in that weekend for scholarship money. And they were, keeping it within accounts for all of the youth. Ryan was a little too old to benefit as much as his younger brother did from it. But I know his younger brother still had money in his account a couple years ago. And it was tremendous, the amount of lives that were changed through that show.
And it wasn't just you weren't just winning based on if your animal won the class. There was also showmanship, there was speech contests, art contests, all sorts of things like that. I know, not to steal your thunder, but I think there's success stories out there from some folks Ryan and I grew up with who one gal became a vet and graduated without debt. I'm pretty sure because of the Autobahn itself, and just a whole bunch of other stories like that out there that you hear. So definitely a huge void to fill when that left.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, huge monetarily and just with the events. I mean, they had a cookie baking contest, for goodness sake, They did everything. So, and that's kind of part of where I think like the next gen idea came from, because like the TOBAA's, what's now called their junior nationals, it used to be the National Youth Show. There's a gold merit competition, which I think has, benefited a lot of young people, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people know about it. And you do have to have shown at an affiliate show to be involved in it. So it's, but Audubon, you didn't have to have that. You showed up. So I don't even know that you had to bring a calf to be involved. You could enter the AgMech and art and all the other things. So I just, you look back on those things, and Larry Barker, the guy that put it on, he ahead of his time, I think. So it was really
For sure.
cool. Yeah. But there's, not to dampen the spirits of anyone who got involved later on. The affiliates now within the TLBA, and I'm sure within the ITLA, have tons of scholarship opportunities. And the Longhorn, industry as a whole has scholarship opportunities that if you're involved at all, you can be a part of. So, it's not to say that you can't still put away for college and do good things, for your future with these cattle.
Looking for top quality Longhorns and a taste of true Texas spirit? Look no further than Cantera Cattle Company. Our passion for Longhorns shines at Old Gringo Ranch, where tradition meets excellence. Visit us online at CanteraCattleCompany.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for the latest updates and ranch life fun. Ready to experience it yourself? Schedule your visit by emailing canteracattle@gmail.com. Remember, God is great, Longhorns are good, and life is crazy.
From the Pasture by Hired Hand is presented by R3 Hilltop Ranch. Located in Chilton, Texas, R3 Hilltop Ranch has been breeding registered Texas Longhorns since 2006. What began as 3 heifers has grown into our current herd, which you can explore on our website at r3hilltop.com. We're passionate about loud colors, longhorns, and docile temperaments, but it's the easy-keeping, low-maintenance traits of Texas Longhorns that initially attracted us and continue to drive our herd growth. In addition to livestock, we proudly offer certified Longhorn beef products. Visit r3hilltop.com/beef to learn more. Thank you for listening and enjoy exploring our ranch online at r3hilltop.com.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the benefits that the youth can see from getting involved more. So what sort of skills do you feel like young people develop through Texas Longhorns, whether it be that they're showing, they're speaking, they're creating posters, just, the joy that Longhorns bring?
Sure. I mean, gosh, is there enough time in the day to talk about how much you learn from being involved in animal care? As far as animal care specifically, I mean, animal welfare. I mean, you're having to be responsible for a living being. That's a big deal and something that some young people never have to do. You get the responsibility of you have to feed it every day. It solely relies on you for those things. I think that plays into life in a lot of different ways. In the speeches, public speaking is huge. I'm nervous coming on here this morning, but here we are, we have to do it. And so things like that, at our competition, I had a judge tell me that he was giving a medical school interview and the guy passed out because he'd never spoken in front of people before. And, that's not something that kids that are involved in this are ever going to have to deal with. I've seen, oh my goodness, too many young people to count that were too shy to even speak, 1 year, and the next year they're walking up to you, shaking your hand and asking you questions. The financial part of it, now, of course, in that, maybe the parents have to kind of guide them, obviously. But like we essentially leased out a heifer to a young lady and she ran it like a business. Her mom was an accountant, of course, so that helped. But every month we got a bill that told us how much she ate, how many, what she had, everything like that. Like that, I wish I would have done more of that when I was a young person. So I really think that the opportunities for learning, involvement, all of those things are endless within the breed, and even agriculture as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So I know sometimes it's touchy to talk about, kids, young adults, but are there any specific success stories you can kind of share or touch on of kids who have gone through some of these programs and opportunities and really made the most of it?
I mean, gosh, yeah, like I said, there's hundreds probably in the last several years. I'm married to one and he started showing when he was 5, and obviously he wouldn't be the same person that he is today without these cattle and these people. You mentioned that your, involvement in the TLBT. I don't know what all different events that you were involved in. I know that you showed a bunch of, hauled a bunch of cattle around. So, what were those for you? Did you do Gold Merit or anything like that?
I did. I actually got my own very first heifer through Gold Merit. And, just people like Ryan's grandparents and just those, the kind people that support those youth programs. I think they make such an impact and difference that you never forget them, like to this day, just, but yeah, I did the speaking, the journals that you had to keep, like you were saying, the financial records and, how much you worked with them and all those I was not a fan of, but they taught me a lot. But yeah, just, I mean, it seems like not to put a broad answer on it, but it seems like no matter the time in history in the Longhorn breed, there has always been generous, caring adults with perhaps, they've been blessed financially and they're able to create support systems and give back to the youth, whether it be through, sharing their cattle, sharing their time, sharing their finances. It's extraordinary. You touched on it. You said we're not a very big group, but I think we're one of the most caring groups, out there for sure. And you and Ryan are, I'll spin it back on you. You put it on me, but I'll put it back on you guys. You guys are giving back more than anyone. That's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. We do what we can, sometimes not much, sometimes it's maybe more than we should, but, of course, I, went over some of these questions with Ryan last night, back to the original question of the success stories. He, more than I, saw like the big FFA groups that came in. And those, even when I was in FFA, the kids that get shoved into FFA are, the kids that don't have an elective, or none of the other teachers want to deal with what they've got going on. And they know that the agricultural programs can give them an outlet to do something. And so like Ferris specifically, they had a huge impact on a ton of lives. There were young people there that came from families that couldn't have afforded cattle. Mm-hmm. But the school helped provide for them, and, people loaned cattle like you're talking about. And who knows where a lot of those young people are right now. I specifically know, like I guess people from like yours and Ryan's time frame of
old people.
No, I don't want to call myself old.
I mean, we're getting there, Devin.
I'm middle age is here for sure. I can see it all over my face. But like if I had to say a specific name, like Stephanie Bradley, gosh, she credits Gold Merit and the speaking and the Longhorns and taking care of stuff all the time. She's a lawyer, speaks all over the place.
Still a huge advocate for just agriculture in general, right?
She absolutely is. Yes. Outside of agriculture, people that came back into agriculture, there's a young lady that I had judge the Gold Merit competition this year. Also, I'm pretty pro Gold Merit because I'm the chairperson last year and this year.
Keep on plugging it. I love it.
And it's also one of the main speaking opportunities within the TOBAA. So for young people, and they do have to do those record books, which those are intense.
Sorry, kids.
Yeah, they're intense, but they do pay off. Sorry. Yeah, no, Stephanie does tons of things. And I had that one young lady, she came back. She works for a financial institution now. But, no telling what part of Longhorns helped her. She was so glad to be able to come back and give back again. So it was fantastic.
And I feel like at its most basic level, and these are probably a lot of the stories you don't hear about, right? But at its most basic level, when you're connecting kids who, like you said, maybe are struggling for equal opportunities or any opportunity, and you just connect them with animals themselves, even if it's the peace they have when they're around them or the friend that they make in the animal, even though, maybe that's not what it's supposed to be with beef cattle. That's so healing and so impactful in itself, that just that in itself is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. 10,000% on that one. Yeah. There's one young lady that I can think of her Facebook right now. And I think she had some steers and now she's started, a business with her steers. Probably in part because she loved them so much she couldn't get rid of them. And that is difficult sometimes for the young people because they'll start with a steer and they spend so much time with them that they don't want to put them into a meat program. But there's opportunities for that too. I mean, there's tons of people that have 5 or 10 acres that just want something cool to look at forever, and steers are great for that.
And I feel like too, just the friendships that you form. So like you mentioned, kids a lot of times choose sports over, agriculture. And I've seen it in my own kids. Sports offer great friendships and lifelong friendships as well. But you can get that exact same thing with the cattle. I feel like sometimes maybe even, better friendships. That's the maid of honor in my wedding was, I met her showing cows, and we were from 2 different sides of the country. And, that's the only way we would have ever known each other was through the World Show and the Gold Merit.
Yes, for sure. And that, back to your question at the beginning about, what do Longhorns offer maybe more than another breed is that, people are from all over. We had, for probably the first time in a while, we had people at the TLBA's World Expo this year from Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming. They're making friends with kids down in South Texas. They're a day's drive apart. But yeah, hopefully, they'll make friends. It's all about who you know in life, right? About networking. So, and this is a huge network.
And that doesn't seem like that big of a deal now with social media because everyone can be so connected. But that's still a big deal, like to drive across the country and make actual friends face to face. Huge deal.
Yeah. Actually talking to someone's face is totally different than typing on your keyboard. I still, maybe I'm old school in that. Maybe my age is showing there, but it's just not the same. You can call a breeder or send them a text message, but until you go to their place and see their animals and see what they have to offer, that's kind of a different thing to talk about. But until you, go and make a friend, in an actual face-to-face situation, it's different when you're showing against somebody and you're like, I'm going to kick your rear today, and then you have to go to dinner with them afterwards. It's a big deal.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out? Rural life can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be.
Welcome to Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, the podcast for women who are craving connection, laughter, solidarity, camaraderie, and just overall encouragement in your everyday life and dreams.
Each week, your hosts, Annalise, that's me, and Courtney will cover topics such as farm life, mom life, making money online, side hustles, hobbies, sharing on social media, jobs off the farm, and so much more.
Us rural gals need to stick together, so saddle up for some fun, real, and unsolicited advice and stories from our everyday farm lives.
Grab a drink. We're Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, and we're here to help. Listen wherever you find podcasts.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions.
It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more.
And now, back to the podcast.
So what advice would you give to parents or guardians who want to get their kids involved in something like this? And maybe they're not, but maybe they see the benefits of it for their children or want to kind of nurture their children's interest.
Sure. I think that's probably the biggest thing is to do it together. I'm going to use, my neighbor for an example. They live on a property where the breeder, she breeds show cattle. She's probably one of the top breeders of the haltered TLBA show cattle right now. He was little and shy and would hide behind his mom's leg. And every year the lady would ask him, "Do you want to show cows?" "No, I'm not doing that. I'm not getting in front of people. You want to show cows?" And he finally said yes. And, he was 7 at the time. He can't halter break cattle by himself. He can't wash them and haul them. It's not that you have to do that to be involved, but just in this specific instance. So mom and dad had to put their mud boots on and figure out what to do, and it's changed. I kind of think it's changed their family dynamic almost because, they spend every day together. So it's really cool to see stuff like that. But just do it together. Sorry, if I talk about kids, I'm going to tear up. It's every time.
You're good. It just shows how much you care. It's awesome.
It's my middle-aged cross to bear. My hormones come right out of my eyeballs. So, that's probably my biggest thing. Do it together. There's tons of opportunities for people to loan an animal. Like I said, with the one young lady that we loaned a calf to, it was one of the best calves we've ever raised. And she wanted a good one. So we paid what we could and she paid what she could, and she hauled her around and showed her, and it was fantastic. Sorry.
You're good.
I think everybody should do it.
What advice would you have if, a family definitely wants to embrace it and they want to get involved, but there are maybe some financial holdups? Are there some resources you can offer that they could benefit from?
If you're in a bind financially and my first point would be, if you want to do haltered shows, look at steers. They're going to be less expensive. They don't require, breeding. You can keep them for 3 years. You never have to, and you get to show them a bit longer, especially them bulls. If you want to be involved in, futurities and stuff like that, that's totally an option as well. Go talk to some breeders, see what they have to offer, see what you can do. Maybe you can find some screaming good deals every once in a while, but you got to hunt. Mm-hmm. And, that's not going to be something that everyone can do. And if you're new, maybe you're not going to know where those little honey holes are. But it's out there. And like you said, people are willing to help. If a young person wanted to be involved, in a futurity, say, there aren't specific classes for young people's animals, yet. I don't know of any that are coming, but, you kind of see that stuff happening, like you mentioned with the top hand sale. There's a drive for youth involvement throughout the industry. But if they were wanting to get involved, in a futurity or something like that, talk to your extension office. They may have some opportunities there. If you have an ag barn at your school, then you're not having to worry about facilities at home. Mm-hmm. I've seen some kids do, it's not my favorite, probably because I'm old, but do like crowdfunding, essentially. So where they're asking, I've seen a particular person, a young person, they were, selling crafts. One young lady, goodness, she sold enough car air fresheners to buy a $3,000 heifer. Oh, that was a lot of air fresheners. So think outside the box. That would probably be, go for it, do it as a family, think outside the box if you're, strapped for cash. But there's some options. Talk to somebody that's been around for a while, like, show feed, whether, whatever kind of animal you're gonna, whatever kind of animal, whatever style of animal you want to own, buy the one that you like. But if you're keeping it in a confined area, you're going to need to feed it. And show feed is really expensive if you just go to the feed store and buy it. But like we have a mill that's pretty close to us, and we can get the same feed for almost half. It's really nice. Not everyone has that luxury, but if you look around long enough, you can find some ways to cut costs and save some money.
And I feel like if I could add on to that a little bit, maybe like don't be afraid to start local, because I feel like a lot of times maybe 20 miles down the road, there's an established breeder who maybe they have never been asked, but they would be happy to embrace, helping out youth. And whether that means you strike up a deal or you get to go to their ranch and, get a little bit more involved in that way. So don't be afraid to like look around you geographically as well, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And kind of ties back into what I was talking about, my neighbor does. He didn't have to buy those cattle. She just wanted someone to show for her. And that's what they did for quite a while. This year, all of the cattle that he shows, his name is attached to. So he's kind of worked his way up, which is really incredible. He's 11, and he's got a show string that are all owned or partly owned by him. And he just started a few years ago and didn't own a cow at all himself, for sure. So yeah, look at the people that are close to you. Maybe you can use their ranch to keep the animal even. I'm sure you and Ryan were talking earlier. I think y'all were talking about sales. There's sales all over because there are people all over. There are breeders everywhere. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
So can you speak to anything exciting or anything new maybe coming up in the industry that you're working on as opportunities?
Not currently. We're kind of still looking at this next year for that next gen competition to happen again. We do have some, for the first time that I'm aware of, the TLBT is going to be involved in the Horn Showcase this year. So, we've got some of the youth organization from the TLBA going to be involved in the TLBA's big, one of their biggest events of the year.
Are they helping with, can you talk a little bit about how they're involved?
Excuse me. The Horn Showcase Committee was kind enough to allow them to do some fundraising there. So I'm not sure when this will come out, but so it may come out after the Horn Showcase, and I may be incorrect on some of this, so forgive me if I am, but the intention is to have some young people there to volunteer, to be seen, to meet breeders, to help the office staff and the Horn Showcase Committee, to kind of broaden their perspective, and also help help everyone be seen by everyone else, for lack of better terms. So, I personally felt like that was missing, and there were some other people who stood with me in that. So we're encouraging the youth officers and directors to be involved and to get the membership involved in things outside of haltered shows. So we're trying.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, what haven't I asked you about, or what do you want to share before we kind of finish up the interview here?
I don't. I'm not really sure what we haven't talked about. I think we've hit most of it. I'm sorry if I rambled too much. I hit rabbit trails and squirrels pretty regularly in things. You had something on here, and I don't know if hopefully you're not about to ask me this, but about final thoughts on things. And what I wrote down that kind of almost organically happened with Ryan and I, and what I think is great for people that are just starting out or even have been in the industry for quite a while is, those quotes that are like, do what you can with what you have where you are. That ties back into what you were just saying about being local. If you don't have a big ranch and can't buy a bunch of cows, maybe your neighbor does, or maybe somebody down the street does. You've just do it. Talk to people, get around the breed. People love to talk about their cows. There's tons of wonderful, wonderful people, business people. We mentioned earlier, it's not what you know, but who you know. And there's a lot of people to know. There are a lot of really good people to know in this industry. The people are 1,000% what got me here. And I don't think there's, and I think that's probably true for a lot of other people. It's what brings you in. It's what keeps you here. The cattle are fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I love cows. And I really love these Texas Longhorns, but just, go for it. If you think you want to be involved, get involved somehow. If you can only volunteer, that's fine. People are going to see you and they'll be willing to help you, because you're involved. So all those things kind of stack on top of one another. I really do feel like.
That's great advice for sure. And I'm assuming if we have some young folks listening or some parents that have some questions, they can reach out to you as well.
For sure. Yeah. I don't check my Facebook Messenger maybe as often as I should, but it's there and I will be happy to respond or point you in the right direction of someone who can get you where you need to go. So absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. It's a little unusual for me, to be without Ryan in some of these things, but I appreciate you taking the time to ask me and visit with me about this stuff.